Engineers study human iteration because our designs improve continuously. Part 1. The council chamber existed outside normal space and time. Its walls shifted between states of matter, reflecting the nature of its inhabitants. The architects of the infinite lattice had built this place 10 million years ago, and it had not changed since. Why would it? The design was perfect. Stood before the assembled council, her form rippling with colors that had no names in any human language. She had called this emergency session, though emergencies were rare among beings who could see across dimensions and calculate probability streams 1,000 years into the future. "I have found something impossible," she announced. The council members stirred. Elder architect who had designed 300 universes in his lifetime leaned forward. His voice resonated through the chamber like distant thunder. "Impossible is a strong word. We who shape reality know that nothing is truly impossible, merely improbable." Activated the viewing field. Images appeared in the air between them, showing a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. "This is Earth. We hit 12,000 years ago during our survey of promising species. At that time, the dominant intelligent species had discovered agriculture. They were building permanent settlements. They showed the standard markers of early civilization." "And," prompted architect, her patience already wearing thin, "many species follow this pattern. Why bring this to the full council?" "Because I checked on them again last week." Changed the image. The same planet appeared, but the surface now glittered with lights. Structures of metal and glass reached toward the sky. Machines flew through the atmosphere. Signals radiated outward into space, carrying information encoded in electromagnetic waves. The council chamber fell silent. Then the whispers began. "That cannot be the same species," said. "You are showing us two different civilizations separated by millions of years." 12,000 years, corrected, "and it is the same species, humanity." She displayed more images in rapid succession. Humans with stone tools, humans with bronze, humans with iron, humans with steam engines, humans with computers. Each image was separated by mere centuries, some by only decades. The progression was dizzying. "This violates the plateau principle," said Architect Has, his voice sharp with disbelief. The plateau principle was one of the fundamental laws the architects had observed across 10,000 species on 1,000,000 worlds. Every civilization reached a point of optimal development and then maintained that equilibrium. The variations were minor, predictable. A species might take 5,000 years or 50,000 years to reach their plateau, but once there, they stayed there. "I thought the same," said. "I assumed our initial survey was flawed, so I reviewed the data myself. Then I sent observation drones to verify. Then I went there personally." She paused, letting that sink in. Architects rarely visited the dimensions they studied. There was no need when they could observe from outside. "What did you find?" asked, her skepticism softening to curiosity. Showed them a video feed from a human city. Cars moved along roads. People walked on sidewalks, most of them staring at small devices in their hands. Buildings of glass and steel reflected the afternoon sun. It looked like any moderately advanced civilization. "This is New York City, recorded 5 years ago," explained. Then she showed another video of the same location. "This is the same place today." The council leaned closer. The changes were subtle but undeniable. The cars looked different, sleeker. The buildings had new additions. Construction machines worked on what appeared to be an expansion of the public transportation system. The devices in people's hands had changed design. Even the clothes humans wore had shifted in style. 5 years, breathed Has. In 5 years they have modified their entire infrastructure. Not modified, corrected. Improved. Every change represents an optimization, a refinement, an enhancement of capability. She displayed technical readouts showing human technology across multiple domains. Energy systems had improved by 6%. Transportation efficiency had increased by 4%. Computing power had doubled. Medical procedures had been refined. Manufacturing techniques had been streamlined. But they already had functional solutions, protested. Their previous cars transported them adequately. Their previous computers processed information sufficiently. Why change what works? That, said, is exactly what I want to investigate. She explained her theory. Every other species the architects had studied followed a logical pattern. They encountered a problem, developed a solution, and then moved on to the next problem. Once all major problems were solved, they entered maintenance mode. Why waste resources improving something that already functions? Humans did not follow this pattern. They seemed psychologically incapable of leaving any design unchanged. They called it progress, innovation, advancement. They had entire industries dedicated to making existing things better. They taught their children that improvement was not just possible but necessary. I have reviewed their historical records, continued. Humans invented writing at least 6 times independently, but they did not stop with their first writing system. They kept inventing new ones. They refined them. They optimized the symbols for faster writing. They created different systems for different purposes. They currently use dozens of writing systems simultaneously across their planet. She showed images of human alphabets, ideographs, and symbols. Latin, Cyrillic, Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and dozens more. Each one represented not just a solution to the problem of recording information, but an iterated, refined, culturally optimized solution. The same pattern appears everywhere, said. They invented the wheel and then spent 10,000 years making it better. Solid wheels became spoked wheels. Wooden wheels became metal wheels. They added rubber. They added air. They added elaborate tread patterns. They are currently developing wheels that can change shape based on terrain. Madness, muttered. The first wheel was adequate. To them, adequate is never enough, replied. She displayed more examples. Human agriculture had gone through at least 6 major revolutions. Their weapons had evolved from rocks to nuclear devices in 12,000 years. Their medicine had progressed from superstition to gene therapy. Their mathematics had expanded from counting to concepts the architects themselves found elegant. Look at this, said, showing footage from a human university. A professor stood before a classroom explaining something called calculus. They invented this mathematical framework 300 years ago. It was revolutionary. It allowed them to calculate rates of change, to model physical phenomena, to solve problems previously beyond their reach. A reasonable achievement for a young species, acknowledged. But they did not stop, continued. Within 50 years they had refined calculus, expanded it, created new branches of mathematics built upon it. They developed differential equations, multivariable calculus, complex analysis. Each generation of human mathematicians takes what the previous generation created and asks, what if we go further? She showed them research papers, textbooks, lecture halls. Humans teaching humans, each cohort standing on the shoulders of those who came before, each cohort reaching higher. I have identified what I believe is the core of their psychology, said. Humans do not view their creations as finished. They view them as prototypes. Every solution is temporary. Every design is version 1. They are perpetually unsatisfied with their own achievements. That sounds exhausting, said Haz. It is, agreed. Human history is filled with individuals who worked themselves to death trying to improve things that already worked, but it is also the source of their unprecedented development speed. She showed them a graph plotting technological advancement against time for multiple species. Every other line eventually flattened into a horizontal plateau. The human line kept climbing, kept accelerating, showed no signs of leveling off. This is why I have called this session, said. I request permission to conduct a deep study of humanity. I want to embed observers within their civilization. I want to understand the mechanism behind this continuous iteration. I want to know if this trait is sustainable or if it will eventually burn them out. And if it is sustainable, asked, what then? Met his gaze. Then we may need to reconsider everything we know about optimal civilization development. The council chamber erupted in debate. Voices overlapped, arguments clashed. Some architects insisted the human pattern was an anomaly that would self-correct. Others worried it might be a warning sign of instability. A few, wondered if it might be something more. Finally, Elder raised his hand for silence. Very well, he said. You may proceed with your study. Select a small team. Observe carefully. Report back when you have answers. Bode, thank you, Elder. I will not disappoint the council. As the chamber emptied, looked once more at the image of Earth. Somewhere on that little blue planet, humans were working on projects they would never see completed. They were building things their children would improve. They were solving problems that would create new problems. They were iterating, and was determined to understand why. Part 2. 6 months later, stood in what humans called a coffee shop in Seattle, wearing a human form she had carefully crafted. The body felt strange, limited, fragile. She could no longer perceive probability streams or manipulate dimensional frequencies. For the duration of this study, she was bound by human constraints. It was terrifying, it was exhilarating. She had assembled a team of 3 other architects, each embedded in different aspects of human civilization, had taken the form of a mechanical engineer working at an automotive company. X was posing as a software developer at a major tech corporation, had become a graduate student in materials science, and herself had joined a startup company working on renewable energy. They communicated through encrypted channels that humans could not detect, sharing observations and comparing notes. What they were learning challenged everything the architects thought they knew. Sent his first major report after 3 weeks. He had been assigned to a team developing a new electric vehicle. The current model, he noted, worked perfectly well. It transported humans efficiently, reliably, and with 0 emissions. Any rational species would begin mass production immediately. Instead, his team was already working on the next version. They call it iteration, reported during their weekly conference. The lead engineer, a woman named Sarah, told me that good is the enemy of great. She said that if they release this version without planning the next version, they will fall behind their competitors. Competitors, repeated. The humans in other companies also making electric vehicles. Exactly, but here is what fascinates me. They are not competing for resources. Earth has sufficient resources for all these companies. They are competing for the abstract concept of being better, of having the superior product. Shared footage from a design meeting. Sarah stood at a whiteboard sketching improvements to a battery system that had not even been manufactured yet. The current design gives us 300 miles of range, she said to her team. But what if we could get to 400? What would that require? The team immediately began suggesting ideas. New materials, different cell configurations, alternative cooling systems. Each suggestion built on the previous one, like layers in a structure. Within an hour, they had sketched out a roadmap for the next 3 generations of batteries. 3 generations, emphasized. They are planning improvements to improvements to improvements. Each version will be better than the last, but none of them will be considered final. X had similar observations from the software industry. He sent footage of something humans called a sprint planning meeting. The team had just finished releasing version 2 of their application. X had studied the code. It was elegant, functional, well-designed. It solved the problems it was meant to solve. The meeting was to plan version 3. They have a term, X reported, technical debt. It refers to shortcuts taken in previous versions that need to be fixed in future versions. But they also talked about feature improvements, user experience enhancements, performance optimizations. They listed 47 items they wanted to improve. But the application works, objected. She had been listening to the reports with growing confusion. If it works, why change it? Because it could work better, X said. That is the human answer to everything. It is working, but it could work better. He showed them something that particularly puzzled him. The humans had a practice called deprecation. They would intentionally stop supporting older versions of their software, forcing users to upgrade to newer versions. This meant that humans deliberately made their own previous creations obsolete. Among the architects, we build things to last forever, X said. We create something, perfect it, and then preserve it unchanged for. Humans build things knowing they will replace them. They version everything. Software 1 becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4. Each version kills the previous version. It seems wasteful, commented. I thought so too, X admitted. But then I spoke with one of the senior developers. He said something interesting. He said that version 1 exists to teach them how to build version 2. They learn from each iteration. They discover what works and what doesn't. They call it failing fast. Failing fast, sat up. They embrace failure. More than embrace, X said. They use it as a tool. They deliberately create imperfect prototypes to test ideas. They release minimum viable products to gather feedback. They iterate based on what fails. This was fundamentally alien to the architects. When the architects designed something, they calculated every variable, simulated every scenario, and accounted for every edge case. They did not release a design until it was perfect. The idea of deliberately releasing something imperfect, learning from its failures, and then improving it seemed backwards. But it was undeniably effective. Shared her observations from the materials science lab. She had been working with a team developing a new carbon fiber composite. The team had already created a material that was stronger than steel and lighter than aluminum. It exceeded all the requirements for their intended application. And yet, they were working on making it better. The professor I work under, Dr. Elizabeth, told me something profound, reported. She said that every answer creates new questions. When we solved the strength problem, that revealed a flexibility problem. When we solved the flexibility problem, that revealed a manufacturing cost problem. Each solution opens a door to the next challenge. Displayed notes from the lab. They showed a web of interconnected problems and solutions, each node branching into new possibilities. It was not a linear progression, but a fractal of increasing complexity. They do not see endpoints, said. Where we see a finished design, they see a starting point. Doctor has been working on carbon fiber for 30 years. She has published over 200 papers, each one building on the previous ones. When I asked her when she would consider the work complete, she laughed. She said it would be complete when she was dead, and even then her students would continue it. The team processed this in silence. Among the architects, a project was completed when it reached its design goals. To continue working on something that already met its specifications was considered obsessive, inefficient. But humans did not work toward specifications. They worked toward ideals that constantly receded as they approached them. Good enough was never enough. Shared her own observations from the renewable energy startup. She had been assigned to a team developing solar panels. The company's current model converted 22% of sunlight into electricity. This was already close to the theoretical maximum for their technology. The team was trying to reach 24%. 2% does not sound like much, explained. But the lead scientist, a man named David Park, explained it to me. He said that 2% by millions of solar panels by 25 years of operation equals gigawatts of additional clean energy. He said that small improvements scale. She showed them David's office. The walls were covered with papers, each one marked with handwritten notes and calculations. Patents dating back 50 years hung in frames, showing the progression of solar technology. Single crystal silicon, multi-junction cells, perovskite layers. Each innovation had been considered revolutionary in its time. Each innovation had been superseded by the next. David told me that his mentor once said, "The best time to improve something is right after you have just improved it," continued. When you are close to a problem, you see its limitations clearly. You see what could be better. If you wait, you lose that insight. She showed footage of a design session. David and his team stood around a table covered with prototype solar cells. They were testing different configurations, measuring efficiency, discussing results. When one design showed promise, they immediately began discussing how to improve it further. "Watch this moment," said, highlighting a specific exchange. On the screen, a junior engineer named Lisa held up a prototype. "This one hit 23.1%, she announced. The team celebrated briefly. Then David asked, "What if we change the anti-reflective coating?" The celebration stopped. The team immediately began discussing coating options. The prototype that had just achieved a milestone was already being reconsidered, revised, pushed further. "They cannot help themselves," said. "It is not that they are unsatisfied. It is that satisfaction is temporary. Achievement is not an endpoint but a waypoint." Had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he spoke. "I have been thinking about something Sarah said. She said that humans are tool makers who constantly remake their tools. The first tool humans created was probably a rock, but they did not stop with rocks. They shaped rocks. They attached rocks to sticks. They learned to chip rocks into blades. They learned to melt rocks into metal. They learned to refine metal into steel. They learned to forge steel into precision instruments. Each tool was used to make better tools. A recursive process," X observed. "Tools making tools making tools." "Exactly," said. "And it never stops. Humans use computers to design better computers. They use AI to create better AI. They use their knowledge to expand their knowledge. It is a feedback loop that amplifies over time." Pulled up the graph she had shown the council, the one plotting human development over time. The line climbed steadily upward, accelerating as it went. She added new data from their observations, and the acceleration became more pronounced. "I believe I understand what we are seeing," said. "Humans have stumbled upon something profound. They have made iteration itself into a technology. Improvement is not a side effect of their civilization. It is the foundation of their civilization." She showed them examples from human culture. Their language was filled with phrases that celebrated change and improvement. Make it better, push the envelope, think outside the box, disrupt the status, break new ground. These were not warning phrases, they were aspirational phrases. Humans taught these values to their children. Schools did not just teach facts. They taught students how to question, how to improve, how to innovate. They rewarded creativity and novel solutions. They praised students who found better ways to solve old problems. "Most fascinating," continued, "is how they handle tradition and change. They preserve what works while remaining open to improvement. They respect their history while refusing to be bound by it. It is a delicate balance." She showed footage from a Japanese temple, where traditional wooden architecture was being carefully restored using both ancient techniques and modern materials. The builders honored the original design while incorporating improvements that made the structure more resistant to earthquakes. Tradition and innovation coexisted. "They have a saying," said, "if it is not broken, break it." They intentionally disrupt their own systems to force improvement. They call it creative destruction. The team shared a moment of collective bewilderment. The architects would never intentionally break something that worked. The concept seemed almost sacrilegious. "I need to compile these findings for the council," said, "but I want to continue the study. I think there is something deeper here, something we are still missing." "What could we be missing?" asked We understand the mechanism. Humans iterate continuously, they improve constantly, they never plateau. Yes, agreed. But we need to understand why. What drives this behavior? Is it biological, cultural, psychological, and most importantly, what are the consequences? She looked at each team member in turn. I want you to go deeper, not just observe but participate, work on human projects, engage with the iteration process yourself, feel what it is like to improve something that already works. You want us to think like humans, sounded uncertain. I want us to understand them, replied. And the only way to truly understand a species is to see the universe through their eyes. The meeting ended. Each architect returned to their embedded role, carrying with them a new mission. They would not just observe the human drive to iterate, they would experience it. And in doing so, they would begin to change in ways they could not yet predict. Part 3. 3 months had passed since the deep immersion began. Stood in the startup's lab late at night, staring at a solar panel design on her computer screen. The rest of the team had gone home hours ago, but she remained, unable to stop thinking about a potential improvement to the electron transport layer. She caught herself and stopped. This was not part of the observation protocol. She was thinking like a human. Worse, she was feeling like a human. The itch to optimize, to refine, to push the efficiency just a fraction of a percent higher had become almost irresistible. She opened an encrypted channel to her team. We need to meet, now. Within an hour, all 4 architects gathered in a shielded location, temporarily dropping their human disguises. The relief of returning to their natural forms was immense, but so was the discomfort. Something had changed. I have been compromised, said immediately. I spent 6 hours yesterday working on a suspension system redesign that was not assigned to me. I did it because I saw how it could be better. I could not stop myself. I refactored an entire last week, X admitted. 3,000 lines of code that worked perfectly. I rewrote it because I saw a more elegant solution. My team lead praised me. I felt pride. Nodded. I have been dreaming about molecular structures. Human brains dream, and now this human brain I inhabit dreams about work, about improvements, about iterations I want to try tomorrow. Felt a wave of relief that she was not alone in this experience, but the relief was tinged with concern. We have been infected, she said, not with a disease but with a way of thinking. The human drive to iterate is contagious. Is it really an infection? Asked. Or is it just logical? When I see a suboptimal design, I now immediately envision how to improve it. When I solve a problem, I see 3 more problems that solution creates. Is this contamination or is this clarity? X brought up a visualization. I have been analyzing my own thought patterns. Before embedding among humans, my problem-solving process was linear. Identify problem, calculate optimal solution, implement solution, mark as complete. Now look at this. The visualization showed a branching network of thoughts, each solution spawning new questions, each answer revealing new possibilities. It was messy, chaotic, inefficient by architect standards. It was also undeniably creative. We need to report this to the council, said. We are losing objectivity. Are we, asked, or are we gaining a perspective we never had before? She shared her own revelation. Working with David and the solar panel team, she had experienced something the architects never designed for, the joy of improvement. Not the satisfaction of completion, but the excitement of progress. Every incremental gain felt meaningful because it was part of a larger journey that had no end. David told me something yesterday, said. He said that his greatest fear is not failure, it is stagnation. He is terrified of the day when he stops seeing ways to make things better. To him, that would be a kind of death. The architects absorbed this in silence. Stagnation was their natural state. They had achieved perfection and maintained it for millions of years. They had considered this their greatest accomplishment. But what if it was not an accomplishment? What if it was a trap? We need to present our findings to the council, decided, but not just observations. We need to show them what we have experienced. We need to make them feel this. They spent the next week preparing their report. They did not just compile data. They crafted a narrative. They built a case. They designed a presentation that would challenge everything the council believed about optimal civilization development. When they finally returned to the council chamber, the contrast was jarring. The chamber looked exactly as it had 6 months ago, 6 million years ago, 6 billion years ago, perfect, unchanging, dead. Elder welcomed them back. Your report has been anticipated. Please share your findings. Activated the presentation. She did not start with data. She started with a story. Imagine, she said, that you have designed the perfect dimensional bridge. It functions flawlessly. It will last forever. You are proud of your work. Now imagine that a colleague approaches you and says, "What if we could make it better?" What would you say? "I would say it is already perfect," replied. "Why waste resources on what already functions optimally?" "Exactly," said. "That is the architect way. That has been our way for millions of years, but humans would give a different answer. They would say, how could we make it better? And then they would find a way." She showed the council everything they had observed. The electric vehicle iterations, the software versioning, the solar panel improvements, the recursive tool making, the cultural celebration of change. But more importantly, she showed them the results. In the time we have been studying them, humans have landed a reusable rocket on a floating platform in the ocean, said. They have cured 3 diseases. They have created an artificial intelligence that can engage in creative writing. They have improved global literacy rates by 2%. These may seem like small achievements to us, but consider the rate of change. She displayed the comparison graph again, but now it included projections. At their current rate of iteration, humans will achieve faster-than-light travel within 500 years. They will develop dimensional manipulation within 2,000 years. They will reach our level of technological sophistication within 10,000 years. 10,000 years, repeated. It took us 1 billion years to reach our current level. Because we plateaued, said bluntly. We achieved good enough and stopped. Humans will never stop. She showed them something else. Records of species the architects had studied over the. Of the 10,000 species, 3,000 had gone extinct. The architects had always attributed this to natural cosmic cycles, to inevitable entropy. But had found a pattern. The species that survived were the ones that continued to adapt, to change, to iterate. The species that reached a stable equilibrium and maintained it were the ones that died when conditions shifted. The universe changes, said. Stars die, planets shift orbits, cosmic events occur. A civilization that is perfectly adapted to conditions today will be poorly adapted to conditions tomorrow, unless they keep adapting. We have survived for millions of years without iteration, pointed out. Have we challenged? Or have we just been lucky, and how much longer will our luck hold? She showed them something that made the entire council go silent, a simulation of the galaxy's future. In 3 million years, the cosmic background radiation would shift enough to disrupt the energy matrices the architects used for nearly everything. Their technology, perfect as it was, would fail. We have known about this for 500,000 years, said. We have done nothing because our solution works perfectly right now. In 3 million years, it will stop working, and we will face a crisis we are not prepared for because we have forgotten how to adapt. Stepped forward. I propose a thought experiment. What if we applied human iteration principles to our own civilization? What if we started improving our designs even though they already work? Chaos, said immediately. Instability. Our civilization functions because everything is precisely calibrated. Change one element and you risk the entire system. That is exactly what humans do, X said. They call it innovation. They deliberately disrupt stable systems to force evolution. It is terrifying. It is also the reason they survive. Displayed research from human history. Humans have faced 4 major extinction events in their brief existence: ice ages, volcanic winters, plague epidemics. Each time they survived by adapting, by changing their technology, their strategies, their very way of life. Species that could not adapt died. Humans iterated their way through every crisis. The council chamber erupted in debate. Conservative architects argued that their way had worked for millions of years. Progressive architects argued that success in the past did not guarantee success in the future. The discussion grew heated in ways that were unusual for beings who normally operated on pure logic. Finally, held up a hand for silence. I am not asking the council to transform overnight. I am asking for permission to run an experiment. Let me work with a small group of architects who are willing to try human-style iteration. We will take one of our existing designs and try to improve it, just to see what happens. Improve what is already perfect, looked troubled. What if you break it? Then we will learn from the failure and try again, said. That is what humans do. The council debated for hours, days. The discussion revealed deep philosophical divides that had been buried under millions of years of stagnation. Some architects were afraid of change. Others were excited by it. Some saw iteration as a threat. Others saw it as an opportunity. In the end, they voted. The margin was narrow: 49% for continuing the traditional way, 51% for allowing experiment. The era of absolute stability had ended by the slimmest of margins. Assembled her team of volunteers. 15 architects willing to try something their civilization had not done in living memory, deliberately improve something that already worked. They chose a simple project. The dimensional bridges that connected different parts of architect space had been designed 8 million years ago. They worked perfectly. They would work perfectly for another 8 million years. Steam asked, could they work better? The first few weeks were painful. The architects kept trying to calculate the perfect improvement, to design the optimal enhancement. They were thinking like architects, kept pushing them to think like humans. Do not try to design the perfect bridge version 2.0, she said. Design bridge version 1.1. Make one small improvement, just one. Then we will test it and learn from it. They started with something minor. The bridges consumed a certain amount of energy to maintain. Could they reduce that consumption by 1%? Just 1%. It took them 3 months. The improved bridge worked. Energy consumption dropped by 0.9%. Close enough. Now what? Asked one of the team members. Now we ask what else we could improve, said. Could we reduce the energy by another %? Could we increase the transfer speed? Could we add new safety features? Every improvement reveals new possibilities. They designed version 1.2, then 1.3, then 1.4. Each iteration was small. Each iteration taught them something. Each iteration made them better at iterating. After 6 months, they had bridge version 2.0. It consumed 10% less energy, operated 5% faster, and had several new features the original designers had never considered. It was objectively superior to the 8-million-year-old design. The council was forced to take notice. Requests came in from other architect teams wanting to learn the iteration process. Conservative members who had voted against the experiment began to reconsider. The evidence was undeniable. Stood before the full council once again. I am here to make a proposal, a partnership between architects and humans. The chamber buzzed with surprise. We possess the ability to manipulate dimensional physics, continued. We understand the deep structure of reality, but we have forgotten how to grow, how to adapt, how to improve. Humans possess the opposite strengths. They are masters of iteration. They understand change in ways we never have. She displayed a vision, architects and humans working together, architect knowledge combined with human adaptability, architect precision combined with human creativity. Imagine what we could build together, said. Not perfect things that last forever unchanged, but things that evolve, that grow, that become more than their creators imagined. You are asking us to learn from a species that has existed for a cosmic, said, but her tone was curious rather than dismissive. I am asking us to learn from a species that has survived, replied, not by being perfect but by being adaptable, not by being stable but by being dynamic. The vote was called. This time, the margin was not narrow. 73% of the council voted to approve the partnership proposal. As the council adjourned, looked once more at the image of Earth. Somewhere on that planet, humans were working on projects they would never,